Hello everyone, welcome to Switch Mania, your source for news, reviews, and gameplay on the Nintendo Switch. My name is Josh Newman, and today we're going to kind of talk about my botched attempt to make custom Joy-Cons. Alright, so for our crafty corner of crafts this week, we decided that we are going to try and make some custom Joy-Cons. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and quite frankly, I thought I had done enough research to be able to do it properly. I had read that when it comes to the Joy-Cons, you need to take a really, really fine sandpaper and, kind of sand off the protective coat of the shell, and, then you spray paint it. In all actuality, though, it just did not go quite like I was expecting. So I wanted to go through my experience with you guys and hopefully give you, an idea of whether or not you should consider doing custom Joy-Cons or not. I'm not discouraging you from it. I definitely think that, if I were to try it a second or third time, maybe I would have been a little bit more successful with it. It's just I don't have the money to keep dropping on Joy-Con shells like that. So So let's start by talking about the disassembly. There are a lot of videos that teach you how to replace the shells on your Joy-Cons out there, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. But basically the only hitch in the whole disassembly was the fact that I didn't have a tri-wing screwdriver. So I had to go on Amazon and I had to order a tri-wing screwdriver for like $10. It wasn't that big of a deal, and actually it came in a set with a nice mini little Phillips and some other things as well to help me with my disassembly as well. So that was really nice. And when it came to the disassembly, really, really straightforward, really easy for the most part. And the only thing that kind of threw me off a little bit with the disassembly was the fact that there's some areas where the pieces are actually kind of glued down just a little bit. It's not very much. It has like a little sticky tack or something on it, and you actually have to break that loose. And it just felt like, a little weird because I was worried, am I going to break it by doing that? But I didn't. It was just, tugging it lightly until it finally came off. So here I was with my disassembled Joy-Cons. I had all the parts off the side. I finally had my shells. And so, I took them out and I got like a really fine, like 1000 grit sandpaper and just like went at it, okay? And what I didn't realize at the time was that I apparently didn't sand it very evenly. Around the buttons and stuff like that, I started to see a little bit of wear, so I kind of shied away from the button areas a little bit, and as a result, there were these areas that were a little bit more sanded than other places, which was not good. When I put on the coats of paint initially, it looked really good. We had this really nice blue back and we had this really awesome black front, and we were kind of going for a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild type theme. In fact, actually Zoe was going to create stencils where we were going to do each of the Divine Beasts' little symbols that you see on the loading screen, and we are going to do those on the front and the backs of both Joy-Cons. But there's two hiccups here. I'm going to start with the stencils first. All right, so the stencils, the problem was not the stencils itself. Zoe did a great job. What she did is she drew out the design and she used an X-Acto knife to kind of cut out the different etchings that we would need. The problem was there was no place to really tape it to. We were using cardstock, which was our first mistake. We should have been using contact paper. And as a result, basically, when it came down to it, I couldn't get this thing to stick tight enough to the Joy-Con that when I spray painted on the etching, it just ended up a little sloppy. I mean, it looked great, except that around the edges it was just a little fuzzy because I couldn't get the stencil onto the Joy-Con tight enough. So unfortunately, that was a failed experiment. And then the other thing is that the Joy-Cons looked great in black and blue, and when I finally settled, okay, we're just gonna, avoid the stencil. We're gonna move on. We're just gonna do two solid colors. We'll have blue on the back, black on the front. I went to go put on the clear coat, and at this point, the Joy-Cons were dry. I could pick them up. I could touch them. They were fine. They had been outside for half the day, drying in the sun. I went to go put on the clear coat, and the pressure from the can sprayed off the spray paint. So I'm not sure if if the paint hadn't cured yet on the Joy-Con or what, but my guess is, I have a really big guess because it didn't happen everywhere. It seemed to happen in those areas where I had sanded down a little too much. So I'm wondering if because I attempted to sand the Joy-Con down and because I had unevenly sanded it, if that's the reason why the clear coat had, blown off those areas. So I had these areas where I had black and you could just see yellow through it, and I didn't feel like resanding off the clear coat. I didn't feel like sanding off the black paint and the blue paint again and trying to restart. I definitely could have. And like I said, I feel like if I had a second or third attempt that it could have gone better. But at this point, I was just like, this is a nightmare. Let's just, let's throw in the towel here. And so not all was lost. I didn't just destroy my Joy-Cons. Most of you know by now, but you can go on Amazon and you can pick up a custom shell for like 20 some dollars. So I went on there and my intent was to give it another shot. My intent was to go ahead and buy these white Joy-Con shells and just go ahead and try to re-spray paint them, this time without the sanding, and see how it went. But when I got my white Joy-Con shells, I went to the store because I had a new game of attack. I didn't want to use the black and the blue anymore. I wanted to do like gold or purple, so I could do like a GameCube type of Joy-Con, or I could do a gold Zelda Joy-Con. And when I got there, they just didn't have the colors I was looking for. They had the purple, but it was in a high gloss, and I really wanted a matte. And they had the gold, but it didn't say specifically that it would work on plastic, so I couldn't buy it. And so as a result, I didn't have the two colors I wanted. I didn't want to use the black and blue again, and so I just decided to put them on as white. It turned out really well. I mean, we got these nice colored buttons right here. I went with just the standard black on this side, and I'll show you why in a second, but it turned out really well. In fact, what my favorite combination is I actually like my Mario Odyssey red Joy-Con with the white, because then I get like a Pokeball type feel to it, and that's really cool. And that's actually why I went with the black buttons on this side, because, I'm not going to change these buttons right here. So when it comes to the reassembly of the Joy-Cons is the real trick of this process, honestly. Like, if you're going to do custom Joy-Cons, the spray painting, all that other stuff, I mean, if you avoid my pitfalls, it should go smoothly, all right? But the real pitfall here is the reassembly, because the reassembly can be quite difficult. Now, I kept as many pieces together as I can. I know a lot of people will disassemble the ribbons and stuff too. I kept the ribbons together for the most part. There was only one place where I needed to take out a ribbon, and when it comes to putting back in a ribbon, I found that to be extremely difficult. I've never put in ribbons. I've never done things like this before. This is like completely new to me. Before, I was watching a tutorial the entire time, and I just had difficulty to get the ribbon back in, but eventually I did. Eventually I got everything put back together, and then on my right Joy-Con, when it came to testing the buttons, all the buttons were working before I, clasped up the back to the front. But as soon as I screwed in the back to the front, the plus button stopped working. I don't know what it was about it, but it would not work. It was like I couldn't press it or anything. So I'd loosen the screw a little bit, and suddenly the plus button would work. And so I'm not sure if it's this specific type of Joy-Con shell that I bought or what, but like the minus button and the plus button have some serious resistance to it, as well as the fact that, my plus button didn't work at first. I had to really tweak it. I had to be like, okay, tighten the Joy-Con shell, loosen the Joy-Con shell. Eventually I was able to strike up a balance where there's not really a crack here. It's probably fuzzy. I probably can't get the camera to focus, but there's a little bit of a seam right here on my Joy-Con because it's not fully tightened with the screw. But at the same time, now my plus button, I can press it, it works, it's clicky. It just required some tweaking for me, and that was a bit of a pain for me, a bit of a frustrating moment for me, going back and forth between the two and being like, okay, am I too tight now or am I too loose now? Maybe I'll try this again later down the road. Maybe I'll try to re-spray paint some custom Joy-Cons, because Lord knows I'm not going to spend $180 to $200 on Etsy to get myself one of those custom Joy-Cons, despite the fact that they look really awesome. But, it definitely was an eye-opening experience. I definitely enjoyed it. It was frustrating at times, and I learned a lot from it. But, I really hope that I do get the chance to try this again at some point when I'm, a little less sick of trying to reassemble and deassemble Joy-Con parts. Well, that's all for today, guys. I hope you guys got something out of this. If you like this video, hit that like button down below, and if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, because we're constantly rolling out new videos here on Switch Mania. So we'll see you guys next time.